All right, welcome back.
Look who's back.
Yeah, I finally decided to turn up for a show. This is the Dick and Mike Show. Welcome, everyone. We have some special information tonight, some special excitement, excited news. I'm really excited about it. The Dick and Mike Show has got a famous Dick now, Dick Overton, who has written a book called The Overton Presidency, The America I'd Like to Live In. And I've read it, and I've marked it all up because it's an exciting book. I'm happy with what you've written, Dick.
Thanks.
We got a lot to talk about,
Yep.
and we're going to start doing it more and more and more. So, because you've got a lot to say, and I want you to introduce yourself as the new candidate. And would you please take over so I can find
Okay.
myself here?
All right. Well, Mike, thank you. As you said, my book is out recently. No secret, I've been interested in not politics, but civics, civil affairs, my country for a long time. I've often spoke about it. I used to do motivational speaking in different places. Over a period of time, I put my ideas down in this book. A book that I've referenced was coming, so to speak. And basically what I did was say, if I were president, I know there's a lot of everyday things that need to be done. The bills need to be paid. There's a defense bill. There's all kinds of things to do. Those are sort of workaday things. The country does get managed, and there's things that come up. But there are things that I know tons of Americans would like to have addressed, and even in this election cycle aren't getting addressed. We get every election cycle the fear-mongering about so-and-so is going to save Social Security, and that guy over there hates you because you're a certain size, weight, and shape, and it's the same thing. So what I did was I put together what now is sort of my position paper or my platform for a candidacy. I had somebody say, put your money where your mouth is. So I went up, did a lot of research, checked with the federal authorities, the state authorities, and as of last Monday, I filed papers. I am an official write-in candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives for the 6th Congressional District here in southwestern Michigan.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Currently held by Mr. Upton. And I want to say right off the bat that I have no interest in engaging, defaming, arguing, picking apart Mr. Upton. He's been a long-time public servant. He's a real workaday guy. I know he's running ads right now about the things that he's done, and that's great. But on the other hand, as a citizen, I hope he's doing some things, just like when you go to work. I hope there's getting some things done. I know he's a very decent guy. I've met him several times. My point is to try to bring up and emphasize some things that I would concentrate on where I go to Washington and have a voice. People talk about professional politicians. The first chapter in my book is the basic problem. And it's people that make a career out of it. We have people that have gone from college to an assistant or a staff member, and then a higher staff member, and then a representative, and never been in the private sector. Ironically, the federal government runs off the private sector. The federal government runs off of everybody's profit, whether it's individual. They assume that you have a certain amount of money that's over what you need, or it's a business that has a certain amount of money over what you need. They take that. So the government runs on the private sector. And yet, as an example, we have a very prominent businessman who's a dogfighter, been through ups and downs, been through the depressions, the recessions, and it seems that the biggest negative in his identity is that he's a businessman. How ironic. I know people have been, over the years, disturbed about their own IRS and taxes and the system. I know that campaign finance reform gets talked about once in a while, but everybody talks about too much money in politics. We have the best politicians money can buy.
Well, I need to jump in there because
Absolutely.
you've put it to where I need to explain the way it was explained to me
Sure.
about politicians in government. You have electricians who are electricians. That's their job nationwide. You have plumbers who are plumbers. You have contractors who are contractors. You have bankers who are bankers. Bankers don't just all of a sudden become electricians. Electricians don't all of a sudden become doctors. And in that group of different groups of professionals is the politicians group. And they're just a group like everybody else. But people don't understand that they're just a group. And you can get in that group And politicians don't become electricians.
Right.
They stay as politicians.
Right.
The sad thing about all that is the electricians have to work hard to get their money and they have to produce or they get fired.
Right.
Politicians don't. They're the only group that's paid for by us and they're not accountable to us. And that's sad.
Our own state legislators, our own state representatives to the federal Congress are federal government employees that didn't used to be. They were accountable to the state. The state paid them and sent them in to represent them. You're exactly right, and I in my book talk about the personality of a politician.
Right.
And you can't paint with a broad brush. There's some fine public servants. In fact, I think some of the best ones are done at the local level, but where their resources and the things that they oversee are defined in law. Townships have millages, 0.4 goes here, 0.23 goes over there. So they do administer the people's affairs and do it very, very nobly and very honestly. But there's a certain personality that's attracted to the artificial pomp and circumstance and power of the presidency. It's hard to believe that we have people that go all the way through life and have never had a job in the private sector and yet seek authority over the entire rest of the country and the private sector. You mentioned about plumbers don't become politicians or electricians don't become plumbers. The exception to that is that we can elect someone who would ultimately have philosophically the authority over all those people and how they live.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is inherently wrong. When you talk about all the things that come before the government and a good congressman, it's not just empathy and that you feel, a certain way. The big thing that pays off is experience. Now, if law enforcement issues, which is a big issue right now, come before us, I have experience in that. I was a state trooper back in actually two of the bloodiest years in the history of law enforcement. 73 and 74, when I worked in southeastern Michigan as a state trooper before I went back to college, 275 officers were killed in the first year I was in and 280 in the second year. If you want to talk about the military, I'm a former Marine and I volunteered for service in Vietnam many years ago. If you want to talk about insurance and healthcare, I was a licensed insurance agent for 12 years. If you want to talk about education and finance and the cost of college, I was a college administrator for 5 years. In fact, Mike, way back in '86, and this is a big topic now where the Democrats are saying that they want to talk about tuition-free college or debt-free college. I was a financial officer for Southwestern Michigan College. And part of my job was obviously custodian of federal funds, Pell Grants, things like that, NDSLs at that time. So we obviously had to go to meetings very often in the late fall talking about what was going to be available next year because you'd put in what you guessed would be or what you prospected to be your enrollment and how many of them would need money, that type of thing. Well, at one of these meetings, when it came to the question and answer session, and I was kind of counseled on this afterwards, but that wasn't the kind of feedback we were looking for. When it came to the question and answer session from the federal representative from the Department of Education, I asked a question, and I said, when are they going to start calling this what it really is? And he said, what do you mean? I said, when are they going to stop calling it student aid and start calling it school aid? Well, my point being is that if you've watched over the years, we have put more so-called money towards students. And what's happened is the lifestyle, the plant and physical size have gotten bigger in schools. Schools cost more than it ever has. So with putting more and more into resources for public education, supposedly for post-secondary education, students are coming out more in debt than they ever were. How can you call that student aid? And I objected to that at the time. What had happened across the board is a prime example. I think it was President Clinton who lifted the amount of money that could be borrowed from students, particularly in graduate programs and that type of thing. Well, this was a great boon to financial institutions, and it was a great boon to the schools. I had a daughter in pharmacy school at the time at Big Rapids, Michigan, and I contacted Congressman Upton and some of the Department of Education about this. What happened was she went to school originally with a certain amount of aid based on her academics and our financial household picture. When she put down that now the degree, the terminal degree that she was looking for was a doctorate because the pharmacy schools across the country at that time switched from a bachelor's degree to a doctorate degree. When she put down that that was basically a graduate degree, she lost all her undergraduate resources as a sophomore. She had 2 more years of typically undergraduate school. She didn't even have 120 some, 130 hours of credits yet, which is typically a bachelor's degree. Well, I talked to the school about that, and they said, well, the good part is that they can borrow anything they want now. I mean, she can get the money that she needs. Well, yeah, she comes up $50,000 in debt. So the schools, if you check that same period, what happened to their tuition? What would you guess? It went up.
no idea.
It went up. Yeah.
Yeah, but, well, it would, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it's sort of like your taxes. People don't understand when you do a FAFSA, a free financial aid application, your financial picture is painted in that FAFSA of your resources, how many kids that you have, your income, that type of thing. So it comes up with a number that says, here's what we think, based on our wisdom as the federal government, is your share of contribution to your student. Anything above that has got to come from some other resources. And certainly financial aid, government programs and things become a part of that. Well, schools know this. They know what programs are out there. So they know how much they can raise tuition. They know how much they can bank on the government helping them. Every president and congressman wants to be the education public official, the education president. We want to make it available to every student. Well, this is basically a way to filter money into the educational community, which is very large and a very powerful lobby. If you don't think the president of these schools drive up to Lansing or the president of universities fly into Washington, you're crazy. They do. It's a very powerful lobby. I find it ironic that the presidential candidate for this go-around, Hillary Clinton, is talking about making school debt-free. Well, the educational community is no secret, is predominantly Democrat. Okay? That is a known factor. They're very, very powerful lobby, very loyal to it. You'll find exceptions in pockets. So ironically, it's that party which has been a part of this process over the decades, making school costs grow, make salaries up, retirements, physics plant and facility has been expanded. So they're basically in the driver's seat for what's happened with tuition and interest over the years. These are some of the things that people live with in their daily life. Picking at Donald Trump saying, trying to hang on him that he's, the way he talks about women as if that's general. He has called some particular women some particular things. I've called particular people particular things, and I would probably stand behind them. I have never called everybody in the planet with similar circumstances, gender, whatever, these things. People are tired of this.
Yeah.
They know there's business to be done in government. They know the bill's got to be paid, that type of thing. But they're tired of this, of every 4 years, the boogeyman's going to get you if you don't elect me. The chapters in my book, IRS and tax reform, campaign finance reform, race and government, this is one of my pet peeves.
Right.
And I talk to many, many people about this. And I say in the book that if I were president or a high-ranking official, the first time somebody talked to me about the white vote, the black vote, the Hispanic vote, they'd be gone.
Yep.
I find that terribly insulting. I don't know why subsets of our, fraternally, the Constitution guarantees the right to assembly and free association. If you want to have a Hungarian association, Chicago and the cities used to be full of these types of things, that's fine. But from the government out, when we address our citizenry, should never be addressed by anything more than their name and what is your question, sir, and what's the issue before us. To me, it's herdsmanship. And what the major political parties do, particularly the Democratic Party, what they do is they run a game that says, I'm going to be a better herdsman than the other guy. I'll take better care of you. When I was at Lake Michigan College, I participated in a forum on affirmative action. It was the discussion at that time. The University of Michigan's program was coming up for review. There were some court cases that went all the way to Supreme Court. So they had a forum and a discussion on it, and I made these same comments years ago, back in 2002. And I looked at the audience and I said, why would you let anybody talk to you as a black vote, a white vote, as a Hispanic? How demeaning is that? Everybody I know has a name. These are things our own government does to us. It's the politics of herdsmanship. It's divisive. It's disrespectful. It has not been productive. One of the first things I would address and stop and lead by example. We talk about God and country and abortion, these moral issues, and every wise candidate says, oh, we don't get into the social issues. That'll kill you. Well, I'll jump right into them right now. You and I have talked before about commitment, courage, decency, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I've drawn the story of, look at the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, who in much of liberal academia today are poo-pooed as rich, fat white guys trying to protect their interests. Well, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, at the end of it, it didn't say we do this to protect our interests. It says we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. If you look at what happened to many of them, it's terrible. Many of them paid a horrible, horrible price, a severe price. Each of them that signed it, all 56 of them, immediately had a sort of a death warrant from the king on them. Fast forward to, back around the 2098 area when I first became interested in independent politics, and I told you I met Ross Perot and was a part of that.
Yep.
I was talking to someone at one of these forums who then was a sitting public officials, who should remain nameless, doesn't matter. But I said, what you gentlemen should do, and I made a suggestion to something, and right within a group of people, Mike, he turned at me and kind of laughed as if I were naive and stupid. He said, gosh, if I did that, I'd never get reelected. So that's the big price now, not getting reelected?
Yeah.
These are the people that send our young people halfway around the world into harm's way, and then don't back them up when they come back. Mr. Kane the other night talked about Mr. Trump's taxes. And by the way, I support the basic principles of Mr. Trump's campaign. If I were in Washington, I'd like to be there to help him carry out his agenda. I don't think there's anything racist in it. I don't think there's anything negative in it at all. I think it's putting America first again, which we've gotten away from. And just to go off on a tangent just a bit, it's a very, very important point to make, and I feel it personally, and would as a congressman, I do as a citizen. A very strong and powerful America is not a bad thing for the world. It never has been. We've been a very generous nation. We've been generous with our time. We've been generous with our blood, with our toil. But if we're not powerful and rich anymore, how are we going to be that person to the rest of the world? And right now we're sitting on $20 trillion of debt. And there's another side to this I'll discuss in a minute. But the types of things that Mr. Trump is talking about have to do with the sovereignty of our nation. I find no problem with that. Find another country that lets people come in and operate the way we do.
Yeah.
Find another country that lets them come in and operate, and then all show disdain for the country they've come to. We've got places now, Mike, where schools are not flying the American flag or it's, making national news. Gee, should we play the national anthem? It's offensive to some people. As a country, as a soul, we're in big trouble. When you're ashamed of your own existence and what you've done and where you want to be, people forget, because the country isn't perfect, people forget what a sewer the world was in 1776. When America broke away from the King of England, it was ruled by blue bloods and czars and kings and
Yep.
dukes and princes.
Yep.
And the first statement they made about a creator wasn't really a religious statement. When I talk about God and country and abortion and morality, go back and read the Declaration of Independence. And the first reference to a creator, endowed by their creator, when they talk about inherent human rights, which is a recognition of a higher power, of a supreme being, it really wasn't a religious statement. It was a political statement. It said in the midst of all these kings and dukes and princes and czars, and we're not going to do that. We don't believe in that. We believe in everybody has inherent worth as a human being from a creator. That's in our DNA. At the founding of this country, the presence of a creator, a belief system in God was in this country before the Constitution was ratified.
Yep.
The Constitution came later, Mike. The Constitution is sort of the Robert's Rules. It's how we do things, how we elect people.
Yep.
If you look at the identity of the nation, we were intended to be, for lack of a better term, a godly people. So fast forward to today where you'd think the one place that you can have references to that, or at least a comfortable presence of a belief in God, would be in the public sector, in courts and schools and things that have been interpreted to be arms and facilities of the federal government. It's the one place we can't. Think how terrible it would be, Mike, if kids went into a school every morning and regardless of their economic setting at home, regardless of their size, weight, anything else about them, they were reminded that they live in a country that believes and has shed blood for the idea that they have inherent worth. God, that's a scary thing to tell our kids, isn't it? Isn't that awful?
Wow.
And that's what we steer away from. And we wonder why we have socioids and mass shootings and rapes and bullying. We have stopped telling our kids that not only you, but that kid in the next row, you live in a country that we believe they have inherent worth, and you can't do that to them.
Well, I always think back when we were younger,
Mhm.
you know, you went in the class, you started the class with a pledge of allegiance to the flag, and
Right.
you occasionally in some places would even say a prayer
Sure,
for meal, the group.
sure.
And I don't think it impacted my education level.
No.
I still passed my classes, had nothing to do with my education, but it made us uniform. It made us all united,
Right.
and that's gone.
Well, and again, there was this inherent statement as that young person walked out in the public street, went to the city hall, went to a school, whatever else you want to do is fine, but understand, you live in a country that has this belief system. We believe you have inherent worth. Our laws are set up to protect your rights equally with everybody else. It's why one individual can sue the biggest corporation in America. It's why if one individual's civil rights are violated, the whole power of the government comes to their aid. What's wrong with that? How have we not gotten away from that? But we've got people that are too cowardice when those questions come up to stand behind them. Abortion. I'm pro-life. And boy, when you say that, what about rape? What about incest? Well, listen, what I talk about in the book, when I talk about abortion, I mean the arbitrary destruction, termination of a lawfully conceived, healthy pregnancy for the purpose of birth control.
Right.
All right? The other things that everybody's worried about are outside that anyway. All right? And that's true. That's fine.
Yep.
As I say in the book, when people are harmed, be it rape, incest, as a citizen, we have a right to make ourselves whole in any way we see fit. Okay? But you talked about some of the ways that we were brought up and the things that we thought of, you know, thought were part of the world we were brought up. One of the core issues, and I know you remember this, is that we were taught what separated us from those other ungodly nations.
Yeah.
Was that we held human life supreme. We heard about the Chinese throwing kids out the back because they got too many people. We knew about the Holocaust. We knew about the cleansing in China. We knew about Stalin and Lenin and the things they did. We took pride in the fact that we're different. We don't do that. Well, it's not true anymore. We've changed, you know, you talk about, Mr. Trump talks about the trade deals. Well, this is nothing new. It has to do with our trade imbalance and our debt. This goes back to Mr. Perot years ago saying I'd take the trade book and I'd throw it up on the table and I'd redo every deal. And when they said, what do you want? I'd say, I just want what you got because you've got a better deal than we do. We opened up our markets to the entire world at the same time they closed them to us.
Yeah.
Okay, with different sets of rules. People talk about the national debt, Mike, and which is absolutely serious, and they talk about the trade imbalance and that type of thing. Well, there's another little thing that's bothered me for years, and I grew up in manufacturing. My family's dad's business was Overton Machine Company, and they exported equipment. In my job with the Department of Labor, when I retired, I spent my entire 12 years, in addition to my time as director of apprentice training at a couple colleges, in industry with union and non-union people, people that where the rubber met the road.
Yep.
You got it sitting in a building, these are the guys that built it, okay? One of the things that bothers me a great deal and nobody talks about until Mr. Pro did a little bit and Mr. Trump is doing now, we don't sustain ourselves as a nation. Meaning, we couldn't get up in the morning and make breakfast. We couldn't have a birthday party or build a house because we don't make toasters, tools, and toys. You look at all the different assorted sundry things that are just a part of your everyday life and look where they're made. If there were a plague, if there were a political uprising, if somebody just wanted to twist the levers a little bit, just take the amount of foreign production that we rely on and stop it for 3 weeks. Nothing new coming into the shelves of Kohl's, Menards, you name it. Think of the truck drivers, the clerks, the insurance. It's devastating. This is what we talk about being a self-sustaining nation and taking care of ourselves. And as I said, I see nothing wrong with that. Contrary to popular belief, a strong, healthy United States has not been a bad thing for the world. If you look at who we've helped, who we've saved, the blood we've shed, the rights we've projected to other people.
Well, I was watching a show the other day, and it surprised me. I was just flipping through the channels, and they were talking just about what you're talking about.
Right.
If a couple of countries that produce several of the items that we get got together and decided not to produce them or not to send them to us, within they say within a month, that they could almost stop our country.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And people don't realize that. It's got nothing to do with war, guns, shooting, killing.
That's correct.
Stop the supplies coming into
Yep.
our country, And it impacts the whole country.
The whole supply chain, the whole thing down the line. And one of the things that may be a natural phenomenon that people have got to worry about that hasn't happened yet, but China particularly with the billions of people,
Yeah.
all right? When they get enough people that are lower middle class, when I say lower middle class, I don't mean condemning for the, who they are, their taste in music, right? I mean financially.
Right.
If they just turn their supply inward because now they've got enough people to afford it, what would you do? I would take care of my own people,
Yeah, of course.
And that is the problem again. And the other thing that I've always hammered, and I know some wonderful, wonderful people in the tool and die industry and construction and that type of thing. Many of them union and non-union, but they're also people that run good companies and take care of their people, and they take pride in the fact that they employ people, and they give them benefits. Many in southwestern Michigan where I live. One of the things that we do when we go over and take advantage of cheap labor in foreign countries, or we don't require the same health and safety standards or pollution standards, okay, we're victimizing those people. And as soon as someone comes along and organizes them, we're the ugly Americans again.
Yep.
We've done it again. I actually had a retired person talk to me about this, and when I mentioned that, he said, well, look, God, have you seen China? The pollution? God, at least we got rid of all that. And I said, well, that's really great, isn't it? Look what we've passed off, on the everyday person in China, not just the government. And I said, the other thing about it is, by doing that, we've lost a great number of new industries that might have dealt with those issues. We've already, the steel industries and filters and water purification and scrubbers for smokestacks. Those are all industries that would have been growth in taking care of our environment. And we lost those because we didn't bother with it. We just shipped it elsewhere. And I know we're going to talk again in a little bit, and I want to go into campaign finance reform. That was a real big one to me. People talk about too much money in politics. And to me, it was one of the simplest fixes in the world. These are all things that I would introduce bills for. I would champion. I'm very big on a VAT tax, value-added tax.
Yep.
These are things that people want to hear about. I go into the coffee shop in our little place, and we have some real sharp people there. We sit around the table with folks that own farms and things and find out they're college grads and stuff. They just happen to be farmers. They like that. Very sharp people. And they're turned off by the debates. One individual, particularly even the networks picked up, one of the two people last night, seemed like this little irritating chipmunk that kept always, chipping in. There are people that deal with real issues every day.
Yeah.
When they talk about their kids going to school and being able to afford college, that is real to them. They've been promised these things before. We're going to cure, one of the things we might do with higher education, the first thing is, that I won't say nationalize it, but make some hard decisions. Freeze some wages, freeze some costs.
Well, I've been fortunate. I don't know how much time we've got left.
We got about a minute and a half on this segment.
Well, I'll try to make it quick. If not, I'll carry on the next segment.
You bet.
But I lived overseas for a long time. I was very fortunate to live in Australia for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think America doesn't learn from other countries that are successful.
Mm-hmm.
We're successful, and we're a great country. We have our freedoms, and I'm a veteran as well.
Right.
So I understand and have a good, strong feeling about that. But there's little things that happen worldwide that every country, and the question, you talk about VAT tax,
Mm-hmm.
value-added tax. That's been a staple in some of the countries overseas for years, and they're still alive.
Yep.
They're still producing. They're
Yep.
actually growing.
And I want to talk about that for not only the fact that it works, but some philosophical things about it that you've read in the book when I talked about a comparison to some other things. But yeah, got about 30 seconds left, and I want to talk about two or three things. And when I get a chance to close at the thing, I want to talk specifically, as I said, firsthand experience in a lot of things that affect our country and decisions have to be made. I've got a lot of experience in a lot of different categories I think I can speak firsthand about. So about 30 seconds left. I appreciate you. And again, I am a very serious candidate for the 6th Congressional District, my home district. I lived here all my life.
Well, we're going to give you some time and make this work.
Good, thank you.